Ophiuchus, the angels of Kundalini, and the soul's journey back to source. Since the dawn of human awakening, our chronicle has been interwoven in the mythology of serpents and dragons. Symbology and mythology are proven ways of preserving knowledge as they conjure up powerful emotions that consolidates memory. Secular-minded scholars dismiss the significance and relevance of mythological serpents and dragons as mere imagination of primitive minds born out of anxiety, as the so-called primitives would have had fear of snakes, crocodiles, and even the lightning, which is referred to by some tribes as sky serpents. Reducing this very important facet of our human evolution as mere fantasy. On the opposite spectrum, there are those who believe these creatures are very real monsters and evil demons that must be resisted and reproached with the utmost contempt. The vast majority of Christians preach suspicion and distrust of all reptilian and draconic entities. Such viewpoint is propagated through the biblical account of the serpent in the Garden of Eden, whom is said to have led Eve, the mother of humanity, to disobey God, subsequently bringing a curse upon all humanity and the serpent. Stories such as these furnish religious leaders with the authority to label doubters as heretics or witches. At a point in time, they had absolute power to persecute whomsoever they accused of being in cahoots with the devil, liberally demonstrating their brand of mercy by burning the flesh to save the soul from eternal damnation. This narrative have an interesting plot twist, as for some it casts suspicion on the Elohim, whom to them seem to have intended to keep mankind in a state of animality, lacking awareness, much like the other animals in the garden. Ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who was a student of Socrates, considered Yahweh as being a false god who wanted to keep mankind trapped in a cycle of birth, life, death, rebirth. There are organizations that hail the devil as the ultimate symbol of liberty. Amongst them are satanic worshippers, some of whom pursue the gratification of their appetites by whatever means, believing that ultimate freedom is to do whatever they please. The world be damned. On the other hand, there are Satanists who profess to be ethical-minded, humanitarian eco-warriors. As for me, I understand the mythology of the Elohim and the serpent in the garden as representations of the law of polarity. Polarity is an essential for mental development and conscious cognition. All truths are but half truths. Plant medicine has in itself the quality of death to the false paradigm and rebirth to one's spiritual nature. Therefore, the Elohim spoke the truth, as did the serpent. Bridging mythology or ancient mystic knowing with modern neuroscience, we understand that it has to be the feminine that receives the plant medicine, because it is the feminine, receptive, right hemisphere that receives new information, and especially in plant medicine, the medicine bypasses the ego, which is a masculine function. Therefore, Eve, the feminine, who represents the right hemisphere, is the receptor of the fruit of knowledge. From my understanding, the Elohim and the serpent represents the law of polarity. They hold two ends of the same spectrum. Polarity is a necessity for mental development and conscious cognition. The Hermetic axiom denotes that all truths are but half-truths. Therefore, no one lied and no one deceived. Plant medicine has in itself the quality of death to a false paradigm and rebirth to one's true spiritual nature. Therefore, the Elohim spoke the truth, as did the serpent. Our origin narrative is entrenched in confusion. That confusion persists to this day. There are those who are under the impression that once they have a Kundalini awakening, their ego will die, or that by partaking in plant medicine, this will kill their ego. The ego is not an evil entity that needs to be killed. The ego is a necessary function, tasked with processing the content of the unconscious mind. Therefore, it must be expanded and strengthened in order to undertake this great task. If there is not sufficient ego growth, the person will become overwhelmed, and this is what causes someone to have a mental health crisis. Our imaginations, fueled with malignant propaganda, keeps us entangled in an imaginary war of good versus evil, to the point where we have manifested war in our 3D reality. Those who run this world have the power to give and take. They possess the power to create wealth or poverty. They have the power to promote or demote, to accredit or discredit. They even have power to create laws that give themselves power to take a person's land, property, and life wheresoever they see fit. The one power they lack is the power to stop us from discovering who we truly are. We are the only ones who can stop ourselves. And here's where the plot thickens. They have waged war on consciousness. They deploy weapons of mass destruction, such as fear, confusion, destruction, and distortion of historical data, brutality, murder, demonization of anyone who dares not follow the status quo, character assassination, globalized and localized terror attacks, hostile living condition, corruption, dogmatic religious indoctrination, and the list goes on. Our vibration, our perception, our intention, as well as culture, religion, race, gender, and karma creates attraction and repulsion signals which emits to entities both human and non-human, binding us in a cyclical cycle until this cycle is punctuated by an invitation to awaken to the lesson that we are being offered in that moment. To know one's self is the beginning of knowledge. Initiation into the mystery of self marks the beginning of an awakening journey. This is a journey that offers us great power and a wealth of knowledge, but this comes with responsibilities. The serpent or dragon is the harbinger of both positive and negative attributes. It is the guardian of treasures, those treasures that are in our soul, and those treasures that our souls create. Dragon and serpent is the guardian of the mystics. They are the protectors of the innocent. They are wisdom keepers. They are the formidable forces of nature, as well as aspects of our own shadows. Serpents are symbols of healing, renewal, transformation, birth, and rebirth. They are the tempter and the testers, initiators, the guardians of the threshold, revealers and concealers of mysteries, and our greatest teachers. The serpent is the receptacle of polarity, connecting the heavens to the underworld. We cannot ascend until we first descend into the abyss of our own shadows. The attainment of balance requires a reconciliation of paradoxes. Therefore, until every person recognizes good and evil in their own nature, in their own culture, in their own religion, in their own race, in their own gender, or political affiliation, or policies or agencies, we remain an open target for coercive control by nefarious organizations who use fear to stir up violent hatred or states of neurosis that induce myopia. Anger, rage, murder mask fear. It is not an antidote. Much like a medical painkiller takes away the sensation of pain, but does not resolve the actual causation. The opposite of fear is curiosity. Without curiosity, we are devoid of the courage to explore. Parasitic fear leads to loss of curiosity. But courage is the true antidote to fear. The courage to seek knowledge, the courage to seek the kingdom of heaven, the courage to love one's neighbor as self, the courage to look oneself in the mirror, courage to face one's shadow. Curiosity and courage are absolute necessities for enterprise and evolution, be it industry, soul growth, intelligence, and especially spiritual growth. Short-sighted, fear-based living is a prerequisite for relinquishing personal responsibility, hence forfeiting our willpower to self-made authority figures. In a state of parasitic fear, we panic if we dare venture near the perimeters of the mental enclosure that has been projected onto us as absolute reality. Humanity have a history of the most violent, hateful, and prejudiced, crediting themselves as the most righteous and virtuous. In so doing, they justify murder and torture on mass scales. The coercive tactics of extreme polarization of good and evil work so well that most of us are entranced, not seeming to have the capacity to arouse ourselves from complicit slumber and mindlessness. As individuals, we act out violence on our nearest target, be it our families, friends, neighbors. Our world leaders demonize others as terrorists, claiming they have the right to dominate, tyrannize, and take what they want because they believe they're the good, and their good God gave them the responsibility to wipe the evil from the face of the earth. To the victor, the spoil. And so war becomes a very lucrative business. Due to unrelenting trauma, hostile, pretentious democracy that is a systematic cover-up for menticide and tyranny, the average person is a sitting target to be triggered and scapegoated. The more mindless we are, the more we are likely to propagate violence, political violence, gender violence, racial violence, religious violence, sexual violence, emotional violence, psychological violence, physical violence. What is this to do with Ophiuchus? Ophiuchus is the gateway out of this dimension of cyclical sleep. Ophiuchus means to free ourselves by changing our perception so as to learn the systems that binds. We must overcome animalistic impulses that binds us to this earth plane. We are hereforth to master the elemental forces of dragon, earth, water, fire, air, ether, that is within all humans, hence naturally raising the Kundalini energy in a stable manner. These are the teachings of the ancient ones that have been taught from the beginning and will be taught until all humanity has ascended. It is a mistake to believe that Yahweh did not want us to awaken. Forced or premature Kundalini awakening has serious consequences. After eating from the tree of knowledge, the eyes of Adam and Eve were open. They became ashamed and hid themselves from God. Insufficient ego growth, compounded with forced, premature Kundalini awakening, places individuals in a position to become maladapted, morally corrupted, or mentally unstable. We can see this as a fact, evidence, 1, by the number of individuals claiming to be source and claiming that the most detestable acts are simply God having an experience of himself. 2, the malevolent and often ignorant assertion that acts of violence carried out on the most precious and most vulnerable are their karma. 3, those who teach that we will attract the attention of negative forces to ourselves if we dare to speak up for those who cannot defend themselves. 4, those who outright deny that there is anything evil in the world by way of turning a blind eye to the grotesque practice of institutions and individuals who teach sexual abuse of the most vulnerable as a cornerstone of civilization and the privileged right of the dominant. 5, those who prostitute Kundalini awakening by selling manifestation dreams as a get-rich-quick scheme. 6, those who suffer irreversible mental erosion due to lack of ego fortification and self-hate. Just a little reminder to please press the like button, and also please do share and also subscribe if you have not subscribed, to help this channel to grow so this type of content can reach more people. Also, do tap the notification bell so that you will be notified when I upload new content. Yahweh did not curse anyone. Adam and Eve experienced the law of karma, cause and effect. All actions have a resulting consequence. We have free will to make choices, but those choices have consequences. Great teachers such as Christ and Hermes taught the law of rhythm. There is a time for everything. An example of karma operating through the law of rhythm: a baby's stomach is designed to ingest milk for a certain period of time. If that protocol is breached and the child is introduced to foods prematurely, there is a potential for permanent damage to the stomach of that child. This is not a punishment. This is the law of nature. Guardians of the flame adhere to the axiom of milk for babes, strong meat for men, meaning it is prohibited to teach higher knowledge until the recipient is mature enough to receive it. Both Christ and Hermes taught, "Do not cast pearls before swines, lest they trample them on their feet and turn and tear you apart." And we've seen this century after century, that prophets and teachers have been persecuted and continues to be persecuted. The vast majority have been kept dumbed down and have undergone fear-based programming to cause them to react to anything new with hostility. In the Emerald Tablet, Thoth warns, "Do not cause fear, for fear is a bondage, a fetter that binds the darkness to man." We are at present an ego-driven society, attempting to bring to order chaos through violence by silencing every voice who dares to speak against tyranny, suppression, and brutality. Death phobia caused the young ego to be afraid of the dark womb of the primordial void. But unless we venture inside our shadow and lift it up to the light, as depicted in the 12 labor of Hercules, when Hercules finally realized that he could not kill the Hydra, his shadow, through violence, but instead integrated his shadow through the depiction of lifting the Hydra into the light. In John 3, verse 3 to 16, there is a conversation between Jesus and Nicodemus, in which Jesus said, "Unless a man be born again, he cannot enter the kingdom of God." Nicodemus said, "How can a man be born again? Can he enter into his mother's womb a second time?" Christ explained that we must be born of spirit, and that no man had ascended up to heaven, but he that came down from heaven, even the Son of Man, which is in heaven. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, revealing his true mission here on earth. To remind mankind of our true origin and our true purpose. The raised serpent is a symbol of redemption, healing, and ascension. I must include Poimandres, who was the greatest teacher of mankind. He was the teacher of Hermes, who brought us all the wisdom that we now have today. The half-wise, recognizing the comparative unreality of the universe, imagine that they may defy its laws. Such are vain, presumptuous fools, and they are broken against the rocks and torn asunder by the elements by reason of their folly. The truly wise, knowing the nature of the universe, use law against law, the higher against the lower, and by the art of alchemy transmute that which is undesirable into that which is worthy, and thus triumph. Mastery consists not in abnormal dreams, visions, and fantastic imaginings or living, but in using the higher forces against the lower, escaping the pains of the lower planes by vibrating on the higher. Transmutation, not presumptuous denial, is the weapon of the Master, the Kabbalion. Please do like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, love, light, life.